So this is a basic video on the little man computer. We use this for one of the controlled assessments. Now, hopefully this will show you what is the little man computer, what the little man computer is. But also, before we get to that point, we need to be able to say what is a computer. So this is the general definition we use of a computer. A computer is something that has an input. It's capable of a process, so it's capable of some thinking. It has some form of storage, so it can remember things, and it has an output. Actually, that's the simple definition of a computer, and it's surprising how many things will fit that definition. So, what is the little man computer? Well, the little man computer is a simplified model of a computer created by Dr. Stuart Madnick in 1965. And it models something called the von Neumann architecture of a computer. Now, this isn't the actual architecture of a modern computer, but it's very similar, and it's very good for teaching the basics of how a computer works. And it can be programmed either in machine code, so that's code the computer can understand, or assembly code, which is essentially what a human can understand. And this is how he described the little man computer. He described it as there being a room with two trays, an input tray and an output tray. Inside the room, so inside the computer, there were a series of trays for storing things. We'll call these memory, a counter, an accumulator, which is basically a little calculator, and little man. And what would happen is you would put an input into the little man computer and you would get an output. And things would happen in here that you don't really see. That's the same as a normal computer. We have inputs, we have outputs, and then things happen behind the scenes. And it's the behind the scenes bit we're trying to understand. Now, our little man with his accumulator here, he's only able to do a very limited number of tasks, and these are the tasks he's been trained to do. So he's capable of loading information from one of the memory baskets, storing information into one of those memory baskets, adding something from memory into the accumulator, subtracting something from memory into the accumulator, inputting, outputting, stopping, and then we have some decisions we can do here. So we can branch. So we can make a decision if the accumulator is 0, if the accumulator is 0 or positive, or always go to a specific point. And then these are the mnemonics. This is our assembler code. And then we have the machine code the computer understands. Anywhere there's an XX, that's pointing to a specific place in memory. So we're going to have a look first at some basic inputs and outputs. So I have my little man computer here. My counter has been set to 0, and I have two instructions waiting in my baskets. I have an instruction 901 and an instruction 902. And if we go back very quickly, 901 is the machine code for an input, 902 is the machine code for an output. So, the first thing we do is we run the little man computer. So I run it, and we'll look at the first basket. This is basket 0. So basket 0 is an instruction to get an input. So my little man will go to my input, get input 5, and he'll store it in the accumulator. And that's it. So now he needs to move on to the next task. So we move on to the next task, and my counter increases to 1. So we have a look at the instruction in basket number 1. Now remember, this is basket 1 because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In computers, everything starts at 0. It doesn't start at 1. So we're on counter 1. We're on this basket. So it's 902. So our little man will take the number in the accumulator and put it into the output. He's finished, so he moves on to his next task. So we increment. The counter now reaches 2. We go to basket 2. Actually, there's nothing in basket 2. So the computer will halt. And 0 is the command to the computer to halt. That's it. An input and an output. But that's not really much use. So we're going to have a very quick look at how we can store and load information in our little man computer. So we've got, again, input, output, accumulator, so a little calculator, our counter set to 0. We've got a lot more instructions sat in our baskets here to process. Now you'll notice that I have a basket down here that I've already set to 0, 0, 0, and that's going to be where I'm going to store some information. You'll notice there's an empty basket before it. Now it's good practice that my computer to always leave a basket empty before we start storing things, because that's a halt command. As soon as we hit this empty basket, we halt. If I had my memory stored here, it would try and run what was in that basket. I don't really want that. So I'm going to start my computer up. We go to command 0, so basket 0, 901, that's an input. So I get my input, I store it in my accumulator. So I go to the next step. So counter number 1, so I go to basket 1, which is 306. Now 306 is a store command. In fact, 3 is the store command, and 06 points to a specific mailbox. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm storing the value in my accumulator into this memory box. So my memory box now has become 5. That's the end of my command, so I'll move on. Counter number 2, so the next basket is a 901, that's another input. So I'm going to get another input, and I'm going to overwrite my accumulator. Instead of being 5, my accumulator is now 9. Now, on my last example, I would have just outputted the 9, but in fact what I'd like to do is output the 5 I've got stored here instead. So we go along. The next instruction is 506, which is a load command. So I want to load what's in memory slot 6. So here's my memory slot, and that gets put back into my accumulator. So my accumulator has gone from 9 to 5. Now I finished with that instruction, so I move on. And my last instruction is 902, which is an output. So I take my 5 and I put it into my output box. Now finished, so I move on to the next instruction, which happens to be my empty basket, so my computer halts. So at this point I can take a whole series of inputs and output them. Now after this point we will move on to a slightly more advanced version of the Little Man computer. So here's one example. There are some online versions of the Little Man computer. We can type in our code here, it'll compile it into the memory, and we've got the same bits. So we've got an input box, an output box, we've got our counter, we've got our accumulator, we've got these things here. We've got an instruction register and an address register. We'll look at those a bit later. I think that's enough for today.